Happy New Year. This is episode number 10 of Store and Forward, your podcast about the past and future of amateur radio. I am Kay Savitz, K6KJN. I am the curator of the Digital Library of Amateur Radio and Communications, your free ham radio library. And I am here with my buddy Steve. Say hi, Steve.
Hello, I am Steve Stroh, N8GNJ, and I am the editor of the Zero Retries newsletter. Um, Zero Retries is focused on the future of present and future of amateur radio, mostly digital stuff, and it is available free for your weekly subscription.
How you doing?
Good. It was a busy week after two re very relaxing weeks. So
Nice.
my wife Tina convinced me to take 2 weeks off over the holiday from publishing Zero Retries. It's the first ever hiatus in the 2.5 years, 3.5 years of Zero Retries. So and it felt good. And all I did for Zero Retries is I outlined two stories that I wanted to write, and I bookmarked a lot. And so this last issue of Zero Retries was almost entirely short mentions, three of which actually I'll want to discuss today.
The
I think,
I think ideally in a situation like that, it feels good to take a break and it feels good to restart again because you're
yes, it did.
going back to what you're doing. The um the little blurbs, I don't remember what you call them in your newsletters,
The
the
beacons.
beacons, the little blurbettes are like often my favorite part of Zero Retries. And
Hmm.
it's like I also subscribe to a an Apple II magazine that comes out every quarter, and it also has a little blurb section. It's called like Apple Bites or something. That's also my favorite. I think I just like little bite-sized things. Short attention span. I don't want to sit there and read 2,000 words about someone's opinion about, some new digital mode. I just want to know, like, tell me something cool that's happening. Tell me a new radio or a new, piece of
I'm
software. So anyway, that's I
I'm
enjoy
definitely guilty of the former.
it.
So, but I recognize that there's a balance of what I'm trying to talk about, and then what's actually happening out there.
Yeah.
So let's see, what was the um so how was your holiday period?
Quiet. It was really quiet. I didn't not work, but also I didn't work. I just sort of went with the flow and hung out with the family, and then if it was quiet, then sure, let's add something to DLARC or whatever. And so it was very it was very low key, and I enjoyed it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was definitely a recharge, and it what was really cool at the end of it was that I enjoyed the relaxation, but I was eager to get back to Zero Retries. So that told me that I'm on the right track with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
That it feels good to be doing it again. So
Nice.
yeah. So since the past is before the present and future, why don't you lead off?
Sure. I've been adding some interesting things to DLARC. To be fancy and do a screen share for those people. Let's see. Yeah, just I've been adding a bunch of stuff that we got the okay to add. Um, got just added every issue of ATCO newsletter about amateur television in Central Ohio, ATCO. They've been publishing for years and years and years, and we managed to get all of their newsletters um, online and all full text searchable and stuff for amateur television people, and that's cool. And then we added just about every issue of 425 DX News. Um, the thing is, like, I've been doing this for a while now. I really feel like I really feel like I should know about like all of the ham radio newsletters, you know? I mean, and then I keep discovering them, and there's like people out there. This 425 DX News um, has been published weekly since 1991, and
Wow.
every week since 1991. And the first 200 issues are entirely in Italian, which is fun. And then starting at issue 200 and I don't know, 95 or something, when the internet happened, uh, for for most people got on the internet, or people started getting on that. Then it switched to English as the primary language. And it's what's going on in DX. It's a very nice record of different de-exposition operations and um, and things like that. And it's very well written. So here's I'm talking to the guy who has run this thing the whole time, and um, we're finding missing issues here or there. We're filling in holes and whatever. And I was uploading them. I'm like, okay, well, I need the dates now. I want to add the date metadata. Issue one was published on this date, issue two. And I'm like, do you have a list of that? Just assuming, like most amateur radio and also just amateur publications, it comes out when it comes out. Is sometimes you miss an issue of zero retries or whatever, right?
Mhm.
You're whatever. And he said, "Oh no, we started on this date in 1991 on a Saturday, and we've published every Saturday since then." And I'm just like,
That's dedication.
A, that's dedication, and B, I mean, it's crazy. And C, I didn't quite believe it. So I wrote a little program, just a little script to like give me a list of, issue number one should be on this date, and then like keep iterating through Saturdays through literally last Saturday. And I checked it, and the number system lined up perfectly. He never missed a date. He so anyway, that's the 425 DX news. And we've got it all there. And I just man, the dedication and just like the number of just it's like little newsletters by
Yeah.
created by very, very passionate people, um, are just out there, and I'm hoping that we can give them more visibility by getting them into DLARC because if I didn't know about them, there's many, many other people who don't know about them as well. Um, then there's a DX World Weekly
Be-
Bulletin. Another,
before you leave the previous one,
yeah.
what is the significance of 425?
Um, that's a great question. I don't know.
Oh, okay.
I'm sure it's a uh, a frequency that's important to the
Oh,
publisher.
that's
I don't
that's that
remember.
good point. Okay.
Um, and then DX World Weekly Bulletin, which is a newsletter about amateur radio DXing that's been published by Bjorn Detmarig, ON9CFG, since 2013. Another long time newsletter. Um, and we have added 384 issues. This one is interesting for me as an archivist because um, Bjorn didn't have every issue. Some had gotten lost over the years, um, or corrupted or whatever. He had many. So then I took it upon myself to like see what else I could find.
Was this
So
electronic or print?
electronic. It's always been electronic.
Okay.
Um, so I went to the Wayback Machine and did some magic and really dug around and tried and found a bunch, I don't know, several issues that Bjorn didn't have. He didn't have like the first 152; they're completely lost. And I managed to find three of those early issues. Issues number four, five, and yeah, four, five, and seven were in the Wayback Machine. So that's kind of neat. Those are from
Mhm.
2013. Um, so yeah, we added that, and then so okay, you wanted the old. You wanted me to talk about the old of amateur radio. I have one more to show you. the Telegraphic Journal and Electrical Review, um, which was published, I have to look it up. Um, it was published from 1872 to 1891.
This is spooky because I actually saw a collection of these yesterday.
Oh, really? Where?
Um,
Oh, at the museum?
yes,
You can talk
as
about that. Um, let me finish here. We'll talk about the museum. The anyway, so this thing was published. You know, we have every issue, I believe, 761 issues somehow, and these things are like it literally has articles about maintaining your telegraph lines
mhm.
and a lot of stuff about a lot of stuff about batteries. Here's one on the arrangement of telegraph batteries, and a lot of stuff about trains. You know, using doing getting information about your when the next train's coming into the station or whatever. Report of the system of pneumatic tubes employed in England. And there's, I don't know, it's anyway. So you want an old of amateur radio? I've got it. I got it right here. So tell
So
me
I
about your trip to the museum.
I will in a second.
Yeah,
The so I was actually on the committee that reviewed the grant proposal for Internet Archive to create DLARC,
yeah,
and I was thinking, well, communications, that's a little fuzzy, and but I, I I voted for the grant, and have been an enthusiastic supporter ever since. But what to my surprise, I am delighted with all of the non-radio, but certainly communications related, exactly like this, that's coming into DLARC. And it's just, and I think, well, as cool as amateur radio material was, this stuff matters, you know, as much or more than amateur radio, and it's just fantastic that you're preserving it. Um, I, that the title rang a bell, and I thought, wow, where have I? Oh, and then so yesterday I was picking up a bunch of 73 magazines that were advertised on the local Craigslist. Um, and 73 is a passion of mine, and even though DLARC has a complete collection of 73, um, I wanted 70 collection of 73 for my personal archives, and I don't have a complete set. So it looked like they had a bunch of the older ones that were in this small format. So those are anyway. So I went to pick them up, and they were at the Spark Museum of Electrical Innovation here in Bellingham, Washington. And the CEO took me up to the second level where the old library used to be. And the Spark Museum was formerly an individual's collection of antique radios that he that was eventually turned into a museum. And now it's an educational museum focusing on Tesla coils, lots and lots of Tesla coils that just absolutely wow the kids, and antique radios, and like a recreation of um, the Titanic's radio room, and complete with period radios, etc. So anyway, they have an extensive library of older material, um, and I'm sure that I saw um, that title yesterday when we were looking at the various things, and it's possible that DLARC could get some of that material, and to be dis to be discussed between you and the CEO.
right.
So,
Nice.
and looking forward to helping if I can,
Excellent.
when
Yeah.
that comes.
You sent me the pictures that you took. You emailed me some pictures that you took there yesterday, and it looks like they have an impressive library.
Yeah, yeah, and they need to make some room because they're very impressively they're creating what I want to, not quite a maker space, but they're remodeling their second story into a educational space, I guess is the best way to put it. After school programs and various other things, and they're in the middle of a capital campaign, and um, for paying for all of that. And they're doing great work. And I really ought to get more involved in what they're doing. So, and they have some really passionate folks. They had an amateur radio club, and they abandoned it because they couldn't operate antennas from the downtown location where the Spark Museum is. Not to mention there's kinds of interference being generated by all the Tesla coils. So I pointed out to them that it's totally feasible now to operate an amateur radio HF station, split site basically, via the internet, and they could. So that that's kind of a bit of a long-term goal to talk them into that, but we'll see how it goes. So yeah, that was fun yesterday, and it, my life and DLARC just keep intersecting like that. So
You started it.
I helped start it. No, your uh, Brewster Kale, um, Kaylee,
Kale.
Kale, um, you know, did a fantastic job. And hats off to him. In fact, funny story. I was prepared to go into hardcore sales pitch mode with the CEO of Spark Museum, and as soon as I said Internet Archive, he says, "Oh, good folks, those." And we had a collection of 78 records that we wanted to find a home for, and Brewster came to Bellingham to personally pack up the 78s, for shipment to. And he said within a few weeks they were online. All the music from the 78s were online. So
Wow.
yeah, they're favorably disposed to Internet Archive for the previous experience.
Great.
So. Yeah, we're pretty blessed here in Bellingham to have that, a techie museum like that.
It's great. Yeah, techies in Washington. Who would have thought?
Yeah, who would have thought? Yeah, yeah. Well, actually, Bellingham is quite the hotspot for tech.
Yeah.
There's an awful lot of folks that moved up here during the pandemic when remote work became a thing, and the the most interesting remote worker I've ever encountered here was at a maker fair that we had at the local mall, and was chatting up a guy, and I said, "What do you do?" He says, "Oh, I design chips for IBM mainframes." And I said, "Oh, really?" He says, "And how'd you end up here?" He says, "Oh, my wife's a prof at the Western Washington University, so I do my job at a computer." He says, "I have a very big computer, very big monitor at work where I design the chips, or in his home office." So,
Neat.
man, just amazing.
Cool.
Yep. Yeah, you have a bit of chip expertise down in your neck of the woods, down in
A little
Portland.
bit in here in the Portland area. Yeah.
Zero Retries 183, which I published the week before Christmas. I really had a good time writing that. Um, it was about Jennifer, who is a young woman. I imagined her in her 30s, and Jada, a young woman in her teens, late teens. And Jada's mom discovered Jennifer playing with a portable radio and a laptop computer in a coffee shop in Cleveland, Ohio, and was trying to get Jada interested in tech as a career, and so arranged a visit for Jada to Jennifer's high-rise apartment in Cleveland, Ohio, and the conversation went from there. And I didn't dive deep into any of the tech, but I did, I you know, chip, I tried to imagine the conversation, and I think it turned out pretty well, and it was generally well received, except for the probably 15 or 20 immediate unsubscribes that
Hmm.
I got from, but they were more than compensated for, and Zero Retries is now at 2,400 plus email subscribers. So,
So this was
it
this was a fiction story that you wrote.
it was
Ha
yep,
had you dabbled in fiction before?
never.
Really?
Never. I've imagined stories, but never progressed to anything more than take making an outline. So, and the dialogue was kind of stilted. I actually had to ask ChatGPT several times about the way that you punctuate, extended conversations, and I probably
Mm-hmm.
didn't get it all right, but it turned out okay, and I was happy.
Good.
And I'm actually some future story is going to write. I'm gonna. I imagined how I could do a follow-on, and it would be Jennifer being interviewed on a podcast about her amateur radio activities. So
Mm-hmm.
that'll give me an excuse to dive into the slightly imagined tech that Jennifer uses in her station. And to be clear, she's in a high-rise apartment, way up there, 30 stories or something in Cleveland, and her apartment faces the Cleveland metro area, the bulk of the metro area, and she has a small balcony.
Mm.
So Jennifer has lots of antennas on her balcony, to be able to, and she does things like microwave. She has a Starlink dish, for backup communications. And and the coolest thing was, I tried to think of a cool tech career for Jennifer, and I came up with the idea of she writes software for radios that are embedded in industrial robots.
Okay.
And and this is the first time I've used ChatGPT substantively. So for example, I wanted to figure out what was a local coffee chain in Cleveland. It gave me that answer. Um, what was the highest apartment building in Cleveland? It gave me that answer. Um, what was the other? Oh, and I said, are there industrial robot manufacturers in Cleveland? And it gave me a list of four of them. So,
Mm.
it was all grounded in plausibility. And because it was a fiction story, I didn't, you know, really obsessively check the answers from ChatGPT. I just, if it had been a nonfiction story, if it, that I was writing, I would have followed up and checked every data point that it gave me.
Sure.
But it saved me hours of work, trying to, find that with a search engine. So it was really an interesting experience, and it was fun, and and I got quite a few good comments on it. So yeah, it was fun, and I'll do that again. And I think it helps to set the tone of what we could be doing in amateur radio. And so then getting back to the more normal flow of what's things is, like I said, I had a lot of stuff bookmarked. So the this issue 2 days ago, Zero Retries 0184, was full of ZR Beacon short items, and the lead one was that has blown everyone away that's ever heard about it, is called a new HF radio called the ZBITX from HF Signals, who has made small low power radios forever. And what's really cool is that they're all made in India, and some of the manufacturing is actually done by women in Indian villages. For example, winding all of the coils, those are all done by hand and by these women. And it's all manufactured. And the ZBitix is sold, assembled, and tested. And what's really interesting is, you can connect two 18650 lithium ion batteries to it, and then stick it in your pocket. And other than the antenna, it's completely self-contained. Sorry, it does not have a built-in Morse code key.
Mm.
That would have to be supplied. But what's most interesting to me about the ZBitix is that it's built around a Raspberry Pi Zero. It is entirely a software-defined radio. And whichever mode you want to operate, it's loaded in from the SD card into the RAM of the computer, and you run. And
I want
there,
to I want to I want to interject here for if someone's listening and hasn't never heard about this. That I think you've missed the headline on this thing. First of all, this thing is it looks like it's the size of a Nintendo Switch.
Mhm,
It's tiny. And second of all, they say it's going to cost $150,
right,
and
plus
it's five
shipping.
and it's 5 watts.
Yep.
So it's QRP. But it does what, 80 meters to 10 or something like that?
Yeah, 80 meters to 10, including and what's really, really cool about this is that most technicians don't realize that they have HF privileges on 10 meters. They can talk, they can do data, so 10 meters is a considered an HF band.
Hmm.
It's within the 3 to 30 megahertz that's classified as HF. And you can do really amazing things. So, but this thing is being a Raspberry Pi Zero, you can um, you can connect anything to it via USB, including, external keyboard, external mouse, external microphone, external headphones, all that stuff. Now, granted, a Zero only has one USB port, so you'd have to have a USB adapter, multi-port adapter. But that that for you're right, for $149, this thing just is amazing. And you can imagine that there isn't much radio in comparison to when you've got the trade-off of doing software that's free to run in the computer versus hardware that you would have to add, the putting it in software and in fact, the CEO, the creator of this product said that. He said, we're now very firmly into the software defined radio stage because it's so much easier to add features. And I put a little jab, admittedly, into my editorial about the ZBitX. One of the modes that is very, very impressive is called Free DV, and it is a digital voice mode specifically for HF operation. It's got all kinds of optimizations for the fading and the interference and static crashes and everything. Um, and it operates amazingly well. I featured a sound clip of a some kind of pulse transmission that was interfering in an amateur radio HF band, and it was identified as interference. It wasn't a amateur transmission. So somebody decided to try running FreeDV on top of that, and the FreeDV voice powered through that interference where no analog mode could possibly power through that interference. So that it's just amazing. So FreeDV is going to ship in the initial software load of the ZBitX. But if you have a Flex radio, you are, which is, as I said, nearly 25 times the cost and probably 25 times the sophistication of the ZBitX.
Hmm.
You have to use an outboard dongle to run FreeDV on the Flex radio.
Hmm.
The Flex radio's powerful software can't do the same job as the ZBitX does in a Raspberry Pi Zero, which is so, you know, just amazing. And then there were two other interesting in the same issue. Um, that I was catching up with lots of stuff that I had bookmarked. There was a $900 software-defined radio module that's basically about the size of a Raspberry Pi, um, with a big heatsink on it. That is a very wide band. It's like 200 megahertz to, I don't know, 12 gigahertz. I don't remember the exact specs, but what was impressive to me was that it was for $900. You got not only a software-defined radio that had a transmit and receive port, but you got two transmit and two receive ports.
Hmm.
And this thing is, I've been working on this concept called a super repeater, where instead of a traditional repeater that's within a single band, you use multiple bands and maybe multiple transmitters and multiple receivers all in one system to be able to accommodate different modes being operated through the super repeater. And this thing is exactly what would be required for such a thing. It's, you could basically do it in software.
Hmm.
You could do the whole job in software with maybe a power amplifier on the transmit side and a little bit of RF hardware, filters and so to keep it from being overloaded. But still, the point was that all of the radio stuff that needs to be done is this unit plus software, which is amazing to me. And then there was an interesting one last interesting one that was in the software defined radio realm was a guy named or like amateur whose call sign is Kilo Victor 4 Papa has designed this interesting little circuit board that is designed to be connected to the back of a Android phone, and then you use a little loop connector for USB-C into the Android phone. So that powers the radio. The USB-C powers the radio, and it's the audio path. And then the rest of the work, again, software-defined radio, is being done in the Android phone. So, if you want to do this particular one is VHF, and there's kits. This is an open source project. The creator is not in the kit business, so other people are stepping up to create kits. And the one I mentioned was from a company in California called Halibut Electronics, who I've met the creator of and think highly of. And it's a U.S. source, reliable. So this it's just, the we're this is the reason, the frustration and the reason for zero retries is that none of this stuff is being talked about any place else. I mean, it's being talked about in the very tight communities that are developing this kind of stuff and following this stuff, but only within them. It's like you know, you wouldn't, if you were reading QST, my favorite foil, you would not know that how much activity there is in amateur television, especially the state of the art in amateur television, which is digital transmissions, 2 megahertz channels,
Hmm.
lots of activity. And now you can, if you're curious about it and you live in an area that has a um, ATV repeater, or especially a DATV repeater, you can watch the fun with using a simple and cheap software-defined receiver dongle,
Hmm.
and a small antenna. There is just so much that's going on, and it just at times, I mean, I don't get a chance to put maybe well, certainly I'll just be conservative and say and only half of what I see passing by gets into zero retries because I just don't have the bandwidth to, of course I'm doing it in text. Maybe I could do it better in video or audio, but there's so much going on. So there was, stand by just a second. Let
Yeah.
me check one thing.
Well, I mean, that's your part of your job as an editor is to decide what goes in, and if you wrote, I don't know, you write about everything, then
Yeah.
I guess if something interesting enough for you to take notice and to write a beacon about it, then it deserves to be in, and if not, then it's not its time. So
Well, I often say that zero retries is a passion project, and this is the stuff that gets me interested. And apparently, there's a few thousand folks that are interested enough to stay subscribed. So the last one that I want to leave you with about the future of amateur, and this is really the future of amateur radio. So, are you familiar with GNU Radio?
a little bit, not
Okay,
not super in depth, but yeah, I've heard of it. I know a little bit about it.
so
Tell me.
GNU Radio is it's essentially a environment for software defined radio where there's all kinds of subroutines, et cetera, for doing various things. If you want to put together an FM radio, the blocks are out there and you just have to, instruct, you have to assemble them in GNU Radio and then just say go. And it downloads to a software defined radio. And, for the time that the software is running, it's an FM radio, et cetera. So, um, so you have all of these many, many software defined radios that GNU Radio has been ported to. So if you can do something in GNU Radio, if there's something that exists or you want to create it, you will be able to just translate that software concept into actual operation by simply downloading it to a software-defined radio and running it. So, and I don't have anywhere near, I don't have a glimmer of the capability to write code in GNU Radio. I can operate code. I can, stumble through it, but I'll never develop a GNU radio. I'll never have the chops to develop a GNU radio until. So, uh, NVIDIA did a big unveil at CES this past week.
Hmm.
And let me get the actual name here. This one's kind of important to get right. So they unveiled a system called Project Digits,
Okay.
and that is a desktop. Astonishingly, it looks like a mini PC. It has a state-of-the-art NVIDIA processor in it. The sucker does 1 petaflop of processing power,
Okay.
which, if memory serves, floating point operations per second.
Hmm.
And on your desktop right now it's $3,000 and it can be equipped with up to 128 gigabytes of RAM. But you're sitting there on your desktop with a petaflop of processing power to run AI application. Oh, and that's the point of this being so powerful, is that it can run all of the standard NVIDIA AI libraries that they've been developing. So you've got this capability on your desktop. So at the very end of zero retries, or this particular item, I imagined. So I have all kinds of ideas from, my history of packet radio, things that could have been done and were attempted, too expensive. The hardware wasn't up to it. We never finished the project, etc. So I just totally fantasized that I could get a Project Digits thing, running it on my desktop, so I could, I'm not rate limited to anything, the free tiers or even the paid tiers of these AI systems. So I could just, do this as long and as often as I want. So what if I kept describing what I wanted in an AI system and said, okay, here's all the GNU Radio background information. Write me a GNU Radio routine that will do this. So then I download it to my software-defined radio, try it out, and then go back to the AI and say, okay, we didn't get this right. It's like,
Hmm.
so I can describe it what I want. I can tell it what it got wrong, and it will just keep iterating. It's like I've got a software engineer sitting next to me, at my beck and call to make this fantasy radio system. And then if I can get it right enough, and what a lot of people don't understand is that once you get something working in GNU Radio, you can just kind of embed it. You can embed GNU Radio into a system and run it. It's a radio.
Hmm.
Run it, boot from memory, and boom, you've got a radio that happens to be filtering through layers of software in GNU Radio, but it'll work. You don't have to go. It's never. A lot of people think that GNU Radio is just a experimental playground that you know you can. It's only good for that. It's not. It's good for
It's a toolbox. It's a
it. Yeah.
modular plug and play toolbox.
So we 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 ain't seen nothing yet. And the beautiful thing about amateur radio is this. It's exactly what was envisioned as an experimental personal service, that you can think something. I mean, and we have been doing this literally forever. Somebody comes up with an idea, they build a radio, they get it on the air, they try it out, and if it takes off, they'll build more and have more playmates on the air.
There's so many um, different digital protocols coming up. People are creating things, experimenting with things, with amateur television and FT8 and FT4 and 100 other ones that I've read about. And I would like to I wonder if I would like to see or maybe someone's already created a using GNU Radio or something, a multi-mode receiver where you could just like it would just tell you everything that show you everything that's going on out there, no matter the mode, or maybe the 25 most popular modes. Oh, here's some CW happening. Here's some FT8. Here's what's happening on this channel of digital video, uh, and just I just I want to be able to see it all. I want to be able to hear it all, without having to go, oh, let's check this protocol now. Let's check, what's happening on this. You can watch the whole band at once with waterfall displays. I mean, visually. So you
Mhm.
should be able to watch all of the different communications protocols at once as well.
I think that exists at least in part.
Hmm.
Or I don't know how many of the protocols that they actually have included.
Hmm.
But I think if you check out, I think it's Dragon OS.
Okay.
It's a special Linux distribution built for software-defined receivers, and it does exactly what you're describing. And then some of the online receivers have some of the digital the data modes built in, like Kiwi SDR is it's got the web server built in component built in. And so when you're looking at the waterfall, like you said, and it says, "Oh, that looks like an interesting signal," and you just put your cursor on it and it says, and so it's just all of what you're describing literally is just a matter of having enough compute power to simultaneously to have all of those modems running simultaneously and trying to decode the input.
Yes.
And if it, you know, so okay, if the filter or if the modem for CW can't decode what it's seeing, it says, okay, nope, no coherent information for my mode there. You know, free DV, no coherent information for me there. RIDI, et cetera. And so it'll try all those,
Hmm.
and it'll internally decode them and say, so am I getting something that resembles,
Right. And
real,
whichever finds it first speaks up and goes, hey, it's me. I found it,
right?
and yeah.
Well, what would really be cool is if it was displaying, so I'm decoding, X, Y, and Z, out of this data stream, tell me which ones, look, and it'll just be displaying it as, three lines of text
Hmm.
and say, what is it? And there's also a signal identification wiki. Sig, so we're gradually building up these databases, and it really does boil down to um, how much computer power can you throw at this? And I know of guys who buy used data center processors and run them in their garage or something like that because those things are noisy. But you know they that's what they use to be able to throw at projects like this. You know, and it really does boil down to how much compute power you can throw at this thing. And I really love citing this quote that I made up, or maybe somebody I don't know. I'm using it now. Radios are computers, antennas.
Hmm.
And that's never been more true, in this era. And it's things are changing so fast. I can easily imagine that we're going to be using, there's a machine learning module available for Raspberry Pi, for the Raspberry Pi 4 and now the 5. That's just a, bolt-on replacement. It's high bandwidth, into the computer. And now we've got a Raspberry Pi with 16 gigabytes, of RAM, so I can't, this really, we're we're now at the point where, how much computer power. Well, and I'll give you one last example of how really this impacts in the real world. Um, so packet radio was kind of stuck in a, I don't know, evolutionary stall because nobody was doing anything really interesting. And a very talented guy named, oh, John, um, WB, um, I apologize, John, if you ever watch this podcast. I can't remember your Langner, and I can't remember his call. Shame on me. Um, anyway, he came up with so he was creating a software version of a TNC, a terminal node controller. So now that we've got high speed analog to digital and digital analog converters, sound cards, he decided he was going to take a whack at trying to create a software version of a TNC. And he did it brilliantly. And one of the things that he was frustrated with in classic packet radio was there was what's called an end-to-end acknowledgement. So if you even if you're going to use digipeters, if you transmit a cyclical redundancy check uh, um, in your transmission, and if you can't decode that at the other end, if it doesn't pass the CRC, then the receiving station either doesn't reply or replies, says, I didn't get that right, send it again.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of these times he figured out that it was the issue was a single bit error, which seemed ludicrous, to spend all the channel time retransmitting for a single bit error. So he said, well, I've got all of this computer power sitting here in a Raspberry Pi. Even like a Raspberry Pi 1 has more than enough
Right.
processing power to do
You're
all
you're gonna
this.
tell me he's gonna flip every bit until it finds
You
the one that works?
you got it. You got it.
Yeah.
He says, flip a bit, see if the CRC works, etc. Now he did that and he said, okay, turns out that there were some bits that are more important than others.
Mm-hmm.
And like in the header.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so he had to implement some sanity checks of, okay, if I flip this bit, be very cautious about declaring it a good packet, et cetera. So especially like if you're going to relay it or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But he brought the reliability up to some astonishing level, just with this simple technique because we had computer power to burn,
Mm-hmm.
you know. Compare this with TNCs originally were like 1 megahertz Z80s with a whopping, 64K address space, you know. So, now we've got all this computer power and it's just astonishing how much we can do. And in a lot of cases, we're not. You know, you look at these software defined radios that, are being sold by the big manufacturers. And okay, yeah, it's a software defined technique in the back end, but it looks like a conventional radio. And you can't even run the cool modes like FreeDV on these things. So yeah. So the experimenters are very firmly in charge of the future of amateur radio now, and
As
and
they should
and
be. And
yeah, they're
yeah.
not letting up on so they're just either the manufacturers are gonna, catch up or not. So it's just fascinating, and there's I really can't ever see running out of things to talk about in zero retries because of all this stuff because there is this literal worldwide community of people who are innovating, and et cetera, and bringing it back to DLARC and the history of amateur radio. There are so many things that we have tried or imagined, or especially in the data modes, like you and I are interested in, that were tried and didn't quite catch on or didn't happen or were pure thought experiments, et cetera. Now we've got the capability to do all this stuff. So, it's more important than ever. Like I, I talked about a system that was operational, a packet radio network in Texas that was, and that was very, very popular back in the day. And I mentioned it in zero retries, and it caused a discussion about a similar network that operated in the upper Midwest in Michigan and Ohio and Indiana. And I am going to interview the one of the creators of TextNet, and there's stuff that they did back then that we still haven't duplicated, you know, in any other network. So, and when you read the description of how well it worked, why so TextNet nodes back in the day were these custom pieces of hardware. It used a Z80 processor, a very tightly written code, kind of expensive to produce, et cetera. But now every amateur radio station could do the equivalent of a TextNet node. And we have multi-band radios,
Hmm.
and and we have universal receivers. Well, don't get me started on K9Q radio, so I mean, we have so much capability. It's embarrassing, and we really, and if we turn the hackers on to how much cool stuff they could be doing with radio, beside well beyond what they can do right now, the experiment they can do with Wi-Fi and Bluetooth and all that stuff. Um, that oh man, it amateur radio is just going to explode in popularity. I really think that amateur radio now, the worst problem we have is a PR issue, because man, there is so much interesting stuff going on, but we're just not getting the word out well enough to the communities that would be interested.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah.
so
Well, that's what we're doing.
yep. We're, and so
The crazy. I know this doesn't make sense, and people will yell at me for talking stupid, but it's the crazy end of my brain goes, well, look, if you can flip one bit and figure out what what the packet is based on the CRC, why not flip? Why even transmit the packet at all? And just transmit the CRC and figure out what the packet should have been.
what was it? I said something about, oh, I can't pull it out. Something codes. A zero retries reader. I was talking about this whole idea, and he says there's a more advanced concept than CRCs, or just error detection and correction, not forward error correction. And it was exactly that, Kay.
Hmm.
It was, well, we're now to the point where we can compress a message. Well, this is exactly what digital voice systems do.
Sure. No, I'm not
Is
talking about compression. I'm talking about, I mean, I guess it is compression, but not sending the data, just sending the 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 CRC or the check bit or whatever, and just figuring it out based on the you know yeah, which I guess would be a kind of compression, but I don't want to think of it as taking out all the E's or whatever.
well, they this guy explained it very elegantly, and there's so much stuff that passes through my brain, in editing zero retry, so I don't get to retain it all. But this guy, that is happening. There is a class of, it's not compression. It's almost abstraction. And they said from this tiny little bit of data, you can blow up the whole, you can blow up the whole message. And we are truly, truly getting there.
Mhm.
And we literally, and I say it in every issue of Zero Retries. Amateur radio is literally, and I mean very, very literally, a license to experiment with radio technology. You know, and and any person can do this. For the minor formality of getting an amateur radio license and observing some very common sense rules, like don't jam your fellow amateur radio operators' transmissions. Jamming does not mean that you can't transmit at the same time they are, as long as you're not trying to interfere with them. Because there's a whole nother layer of technology that says, okay, somebody's transmitting blah, 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 on a particular channel. And, if you can hop onto that channel for 100 milliseconds to get a very brief transmission through, you're not interfering with this transmission.
Sure, sure.
He doesn't even, nobody will ever hear it at 100 milliseconds. We're not that, our brains aren't that fast. So, so yeah, now you got me spun up again, Kay, and which is
Oh,
why I just really
sorry.
love doing these.
I'm
So,
gonna wrap it up.
yeah,
Now
I
that we've
think,
gotten you all worked up, we're gonna
yeah,
let you go cool down.
it'll be interesting to see how you edit this down to our usual 30-minute format.
This has been episode 10 of Store and Forward, your podcast about the past and future of amateur radio. Our address for this podcast is www.storeandforwardradio.org, where you can find our show notes, links to all the things that we have talked about. I'm K Savitz, K6KJN. I am in charge of the Digital Library of Amateur Radio and Communication, which is a service of the Internet Archive, which is your free online ham radio library, and also apparently telegraph telegraph maintenance. We've got that too. Um,
Yep.
you can check that out at archive.org/details/DLARC. We added 1.1 million pages of material in 2024, and that just number seems astounding to me, and I watched it get done. So um, it is an unparalleled resource, and I want you to check it out and tell all of your nerdy friends about it.
And I am Steve Stroh, NHGNJ. I am the editor of the Zero Retries newsletter, which publishes every Friday usually at 15:30 Pacific. And it is free to subscribe at www.zeroretries, ZERORETRIES.org. And again, it is free to subscribe. The platform that I use at the moment is called Substack, and it will try to get you to pay for a subscription. You don't have to. I'm
But you
happy if
could.
you do, but you don't have to.
I mean, no one's going to
So
cry if you do. I mean,
yeah. So anyway, we now comfortably crossed the 2,400 email subscriber threshold, and we've been publishing for 3.5 years now, and kind of just getting started.
but you know that thing where like you have cats, you don't have dogs, right?
Oh, yeah.
You have dogs?
Well, yes,
I know
yes,
you have cats. That thing where dogs will do where like they're just like it's dinner time, it's 5 o'clock, and you're just like, you don't have a watch. How do you know? All of a sudden there's like whatever, 5 o'clock on the dot. They're just like, hey, give me my dinner, whatever. I've become like that on 3:30 on Fridays. I'm just
Oh,
like I could be sitting there, whatever, just minding my own business, not thinking about anything, and all of a sudden it's like, it's time for it's time for zero retries, and sure enough, look at the clock. Yeah.
my late friend Dwayne Hendricks, WAADZP, was famous to me for, within a minute of it publishing, I'd get the like back from Sun Substack. And Dwayne Hendricks liked, and it was so cool that, he was sitting there waiting for it. And, you're one of the several who've told me that they look forward to it right then. And then there's the kind of the opposite. He says, well, Friday's a work day, so I'm kind of burned out from the work day. So first thing Saturday morning with my coffee, I grab the laptop and sit at
Mm.
the kitchen table with my fresh cup of coffee and, plenty of time on my hands to read through zero retries. So yeah, it's 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 just a joy to write and share all this stuff, and and to help make the point about how much technological innovation is going on in amateur radio. And there's so many people that, say amateur radio is dead, old old man's hobby, and not true, not true. And I'm just working as hard as I can to, give lie to that, old tired perception. And we really do have a public relations problem about, what's going on. So, about how much good stuff is going on. And we're gradually breaking through with the help of our joint friends, the amateur radio digital communication, who keeps pumping some incredible investments into amateur radio. So, and more to come in 2025. So take
Great.
care, Kay.
Okay.
Good to
Take
talk to
care.
you. Bye-bye.